my name is Schyler Church. I am a California real estate broker as well as a member of the Education Department at Accredited Real Estate Schools. We provide the course requirements to be eligible to take the state exam for your real estate license in California, but also a bunch of different exam preparation options so you're prepared to pass that state test. And today we're doing something a little different, and we're doing vocabulary, so vital vocab that you should know prior to taking the state exam. So I hope you find this useful, and let's get to it. A tip I always have for my students before even diving into the vocab is that when you see a term or when you're studying, just look at a term without any context and what can you explain and talk about it without having any prompting. So for instance, let's just start. So accession, this will be our first vocab term. Well, without any context, without a question, anything like that, what can you tell me about accession just off the top of your head? This is a great way of learning and figuring out how well you are doing actually with the material. So with accession, you should automatically think of the ability of gaining land through accretion or annexation, okay? And what does this mean? So let's get the full term. Well, accession is the extension of an owner's title to real property through either annexation, so man-made, so for instance, adjoining properties, or accretion, naturally occurring. So the gradual buildup of land, so like alluvium, for instance, the soil, that will extend an owner's title to real property. And this is through accession. So let's get to the next one. Statute of Frauds. Okay, so when you think of statute of frauds, you should be thinking of contracts, most importantly, real estate contracts, and that they need to be in writing because of the statute of frauds. It's a law that states that all real estate contracts must be in writing. Do note, though, there is the exception where leases of 1 year or less do not need to be in writing. So basically, when it comes to contracts, real estate contracts must be in writing except leases of a year or less. Also, all contracts, they must be in writing if they take a year or longer to perform. So statute of frauds, but you just need to know in terms of real estate contracts for the state exam. Effective age. So effective age, you should be thinking of, okay, effective versus actual age. What's the difference? Well, actual age, you know, for instance, a property from when it was built to the day right now, for instance. So how long it's actually been standing. Whereas the effective age is the age that it looks like or how it's because of how it's been maintained. So the effective age is the age of the property based on its physical deterioration and upkeep. So what it looks like based on how it's been maintained. It could be younger than its actual age, or it could be older than its actual age, depending on the upkeep. Bill of sale. Bill of sale. The first thing that should come to mind when you think of this is the instrument used to transfer title to personal property. Used to transfer personal property, a bill of sale. Whereas if we're transferring real property, we usually use deeds, but most importantly, the most popular one is grant deeds. But personal property is a bill of sale. Real property, they use deeds. Mostly in California, it's grant deeds. Material fact. Material fact, this is one you should automatically know of. This is something, if it's a fact that is of value, for instance, to the buyer or the seller. So for instance, a fact that if the buyer knew about it, the buyer would not purchase the property. It affects the value of a property. Material fact. And these material facts must be disclosed. So we're kind of going right through this. Let's move on to steering. Well, this deals with fair housing. And the best way I always like to explain steering is you as an agent, for instance, are in your car and you have your driving and you have the steering wheel and you are steering people to different areas because of race. So steering a buyer out of certain neighborhoods because of race, and that is illegal. You are not allowed to do that. Foreclosure. So the technical definition of foreclosure. What do we have here? Well, it's a procedure whereby property pledged as security for a debt is sold to pay the debt in event of default in payments or terms. So usually, for a house, when you're buying a house, the buyer, for instance, doesn't have all the cash, so they need to obtain a loan. Well, that is the debt, having that loan. And the security usually is the property itself, so the collateral for the loan. And if the debtor stops making payments, so defaults in payments, or in terms, for instance, then the lender is able to recoup their loss by basically selling the property that was pledged as collateral for the loan. And foreclosures, you should think of, remember, we have a non-judicial foreclosure if we have a trustee sale, so when trustees are used. But they're always able to foreclose through the courts, or as well as mortgages, they are foreclosed through the courts through a judicial foreclosure. Alluvium. I've actually mentioned this earlier in this video. So what do you think of when it comes to alluvium? Well, alluvium, that is the soil. So that brown material, soil and sediment that builds up along a riverbank or lake. So around a body of water, that alluvium, that soil that builds up, and that creates the accretion, so the accession of an owner's title next to a body of water due to the gradual buildup of land of this alluvium, so the soil. What is puffing? So I always like to think of puffing as an opinion. You could say it's an exaggeration, but it's an opinion and not a statement of fact. So it's a statement of opinion that is not considered a statement of fact. The best way to look at this is, for instance, when you are describing a property. You might say something is spacious, large, cozy. It's a statement of your opinion. So those adjectives are your opinion, whereas it's not an actual statement of fact saying the property is this amount of acreage. You could say it is a large lot, That could be considered puffing because it is a statement of opinion. Normally, though, puffing is usually a little bit of an exaggeration for state exam purposes, but just know statement of opinion. Subagency. What do we have here when it comes to subagency? Well, remember in California when we discuss agency, that is a relationship the real estate broker has with the principal. And then the salespersons that work under the broker that have the subagency relationship then is because the salesperson needs to be licensed under a broker. So the broker has the agency relationship with the principal, and the salesperson has a sub-agency relationship with the broker, and then it flows through to the principal. Salesperson who is working under a real estate broker is considered the subagent of the principal. So that salesperson is the subagent. Now we have turnkey. Turnkey. The way I like to explain this is a property is ready to go. All you have to do is turn the key and it is ready for you to move in. So a property that is completed and ready to move into by the buyer. It is turnkey. Rumford Act. Rumford Act. Well, when you think of Rumford, you should be thinking of fair housing and a California level housing act. And so this is on a state level. And what does Rumford Act do? Well, Rumford deals with it prohibits discrimination in housing. So for instance, renting, selling, buying of homes. Discrimination is prohibited, and that is in California. So prohibited discrimination in housing accommodations in California. Now remember, UNRU, that deals with business, and then so prohibited discrimination in businesses, and then Holden Act deals with prohibited discrimination in lending. Rumford, though, deals with housing accommodations. I do want to let you know of a little bit of an exception to this rule. If you are living in your property and you decide to rent out a room or maybe 2 rooms to a boarder, well, you are then exempt from this act. So in other words, you actually can discriminate because you are living in the property. Now, if it's just a single family home and you're renting it to someone and you are the landlord, but you're not actually living in the property, you are not allowed to discriminate. Joists. Joist. What is a joist? You should be thinking of those structural members, either usually of wood or maybe of steel, that help support the house, and they're usually in a parallel format, either in the flooring or in the ceiling. So part of a roof or ceiling in a house. It's really all you need to know about it, but you can look it up more if you want. Cash on cash return. This is not a huge thing you need to know about, but it sometimes pops up. I, for instance, needed to know about it. Hint, hint. So cash on cash return. What is it? Well, cash on cash return is the return you get on the cash that you invested. So the return an investor receives on the cash used to purchase the property. So the cash you put in, what is that return you are receiving based on that cash invested? And that is the calculation called a cash on cash return. An appurtenance. An appurtenance. This falls under an encumbrance based on use, and an appurtenance is something that runs with the land. Because it runs with the land, it is considered real property. Appurtenance runs with the land and is considered real property. Plot plan. Okay? A plot plan. This is obviously a plan, but it shows where the property is situated on the land. So how it's situated on the plot of land. A plan that shows where the house will sit on the lot. That is a plot plan. Adverse possession. Adverse possession. I'm going to give you a moment here to think about it, because you should be thinking of gaining title based on use. So for instance, you're able to gain title, not just gain use. You're actually able to gain title to someone else's property. And what are the elements of it? Well, you should be thinking of ouch plus taxes. So you could also be thinking of touch. So this is similar to a prescriptive easement where you're able to gain use to someone else's property, but you also are just gaining title. So if, for instance, when a person, the adverse possessor, acquires land through possession, it must be open and notorious, uninterrupted for at least 5 years. There must be a claim of right, so reason the person is using the land, and it must be hostile to the owner's intent. In addition, the adverse possessor must pay property taxes for at least 5 years on the land being occupied. And you can actually gain title to the land, not just use. So remember, prescriptive easement has the acronym OUCH, just like this, but you only gain use. Whereas with adverse possession, you have OUCH, but also the payment of taxes. So touch, and that would gain you title to the property. BPO, broker price opinion. What does that mean? Well, you can kind of figure it out based on just the name of it, but it is an opinion of value of a parcel of property based from a real estate agent. So an unofficial assessment of a property's potential market value based on expert judgment by a real estate agent. So this is not an opinion of value by an appraiser, where that is an official opinion of value because they are trained to provide opinions of value. But a BPO is something that's a little bit that's unofficial, and it's something that maybe a seller would like to know about and a rough idea of what their property is worth, or a lender before formally ordering an appraisal, or maybe sometimes if they're doing short sales or some other type of thing, they're wanting to get an agent's unbiased opinion of value, and agents are then paid for to do this. Usually it is a real estate broker that does it because they are getting paid for this service. But if you're a real estate salesperson, you'll want to talk to your broker. That's why we have this called a broker's price opinion, a BPO. Redlining. You should be thinking of fair housing. It's when a lender takes their red pen and they draw a line on a map and they say, we're not going to fund loans to any property in these areas. So basically discriminating, it's illegal and they're not allowed to do this. So when a lender draws a red line around areas on a map where the lender does not want to make loans, this is illegal and it's called redlining. Equity. What is equity? Equity is the amount of value you have in the home. So the amount of money you actually have in the home, less any liens. So that actually has quite a bit of different definitions to it. So for instance, this is the technical term. Money a person has in a parcel of real property. It is the amount that is left over after loans are paid off during the sale of a property, as well as any other liens that are paid off. So for instance, you purchase a property, let's say you purchase it for $100,000, you put $20,000 down. Automatically, you have $20,000 of equity in the home. Well, with the price or the value of the home increases due to market appreciation, let's say you sell it down the road for $200,000. Well, you have that $200,000 minus any loans and liens. So right now the only lien that we have talked about is that $80,000 one. You might have had principal reduction, but let's just keep it even and say it's just $80,000. Well, you would have $120,000 of equity in the home. Deed of reconveyance. This is something that you would be used primarily with trust deeds, because when you use a trust deed, the borrower, who's the trustor, has a debt obligation. Bare legal title is actually provided to a third party called a trustee. Well, once the debt has been paid off by the trustor, then the trustee uses a deed of reconveyance to give the full legal title to the trustor. So, the deed of reconveyance is given by a trustee to reconvey the basic legal title to a property back to the trustor, and thereby eliminates the deed of trust. Fee simple estates. So fee simple estates, you really need to know about this. This falls under a freehold estate, and with a freehold estate, it is fee simple, because remember, under freehold, we have fee simple estates, but we also have life estate. Well, fee simple is categorized into fee simple absolute and fee simple to feasible. Now, what do these have in common? Well, they're in a state of inheritance that basically you're able to will to a person's heirs. So you actually have the ability to will your property, devise your property. Whereas a life estate, you are unable to devise the property. Leverage. What is leverage? Well, you should be thinking of financing. So it's used by people so they don't have to put a lot of their own money down, and they're able to use financing. So loans to basically complete a purchase and benefit from or maximize their profits with less money down. So the technical term is when a property owner uses a real estate loan to increase returns when a parcel of real property increases in value in the future. So for instance, let's say you have $100,000 you want to invest into real estate. Well, you could use leverage, and instead of buying $100,000 for one property that's worth $100,000, you could buy 5 different properties worth $100,000, only put 20% down, so $20,000 down on each of them, and get loans for the rest. And by getting return on those 5 properties, you are using leverage because of it, and especially when it increases in value in the future. Almost done. Amortization. What is amortization? Well, you should automatically be thinking of financing, so loans, as it's the systematic liquidation of a debt obligation on an installment basis. So what that just basically means is you have a debt, you're paying it off on a regular basis, and you're actually reducing that debt throughout those payments. So for instance, a fully amortized loan is fully paid off by the end of the amortization period. Because of the payments, you are going to be paying interest and principal in each of those payments. So you'll have principal reduction, you'll be paying the interest. So by the time that you are done with your last payment, you've paid off the entire balance of the loan and the interest that is due. Amortization tables are used to calculate the payment needed to pay off the loan balance with interest over the life of the loan. So the amortization table basically says what the actual payment is, as well as how much is going towards interest and how much is going towards principal. Then we have border. So we've already talked about border in this video, and it discusses or deals with when you as a homeowner are renting out a room to someone, that person is called a boarder. And you are actually allowed to discriminate against a boarder because you are living in the home. If you are the homeowner renting out a room, you can discriminate against a boarder. That is an exemption to the Rumford Act on a state-specific level, but it is a weird one, so you do need to know about it for state exam purposes. And it's only if you are a homeowner renting out a room and sharing your home with someone else. Otherwise, you cannot discriminate. So for instance, you're a homeowner, but you are just the landlord renting out the entire home to a renter. They are not considered a boarder, and you are not allowed to discriminate. So that is it for this video. I hope this vital vocab session was of use for you. And feel free to make sure to check out our other exam preparation options. We have tons of them, ranging from at home, from online videos, practice questions, to live classroom instruction to help you prepare for that state test, as well as if you haven't done the courses. So make sure to check us out at Accredited, and make sure to subscribe and like our videos so we can keep producing content. And if you have questions or anything, please let us know. Otherwise, thanks for watching and good luck with your licensing journey.